It's July 14th, and you know what that means. It's Tanjiro's birthday, and a Tanjiro video coming your way. What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another video, and keeping on with my yearly tradition of a Tanjiro themed video on his birthday. It is July 14th, it is his birthday. He is my favorite character, not just in Demon Slayer, but in media in general, so I like to talk a little bit about why I love Tanjiro every year. And eventually I'll probably run out of themes. But this year we're going to talk about my top 5 favorite Tanjiro moments in the story of Demon Slayer. Some of these are anime, some of these are manga, so I will make sure to put proper spoiler tags at certain moments, so if you are not a manga reader, you can turn the video off when you need to, but there is plenty of this video that you can watch if you are not. But we're gonna dive right in, but before we do, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment your thoughts. What's your favorite moment with Tanjiro in the story? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you want access to fun perks like early release of videos, fun emojis, and getting the opportunity to decide what videos I make every week, you can join my channel membership. For a small monthly fee, you can get all of those perks and more, and you get to support my dream of becoming a full-time content creator. So if you are interested, hit the join button below. But with that, let's get into it. So I actually find this yearly video a bit daunting because I do love Tanjiro so much, but I sometimes have a hard time putting into words why I love him so much. It's one of those things where he just fits the mold of what I tend to really like in a character. But I will just throw out there that I do tend to lean very heavily towards the types of characters that experience a lot of pain and have the good excuse of wanting to watch the world burn but choose kindness instead. That's just one of my favorite types of characters. And because Tanjiro's kind of widely seen as this like goody two-shoes, almost like too good, a lot of people complain that he's boring because he's just always good. I like to talk a little bit more about some of the moments that I think show like who he truly is. I like to talk about the moments where I feel like it shows that kindness is something that he is choosing to do that isn't necessarily how he genuinely feels all the time. Now, before I rank my top 5, I do want to talk about 2 honorable mentions because I couldn't make a video like this without at least mentioning them. They just barely made the cut into my top 5. And the first honorable mention is him awakening Hinokami Kagura in season 1. Now, this is a lot of people's probably favorite moments with Tanjiro, and I think this moment is incredible. It's one of the first scenes I can remember feeling like, whoa, this show is special. Him remembering those moments with his father and then remembering the Hinokami Kagura, which he already did know, he just hadn't used it for quite a few years because of everything that had happened. The introduction of Kamado Tanjiro no Uta, which I actually skate to now, and Nezuko jumping in to help with her blood demon art was just one of the most incredible scenes, not just in the show, but in anime in general. And I think it should say a lot about what I feel about these next scenes that I'm gonna go over, that this is just an honorable mention. The second moment that's an honorable mention that I'm gonna kind of combine into 2 is from the newest Infinity Castle movie. So I am just going to put a quick tag here and say if you have not been able to watch the movie yet because it's not officially out on streaming and you haven't seen it, slight spoilers for the movie, I will put a time right here of when you can skip to. Honestly, Tanjiro in the fight against Akaza the entire time is just one of my favorite moments, but if I had to pinpoint a specific honorable mention, I would say him shouting Akaza at the very beginning and his access to the see-through world. This again just barely made the cut because the top 5 are just so personal to me, but this is one of my favorite things about the Infinity Castle in general, especially when he unlocks a see-through world and he's able to have a full circle moment where he is able to save Giyu from the exact same fate as Rengoku. As we know, Akaza was about to do the little punch through the stomach and make Giyu a donut, but this time Tanjiro was able to act fast enough to protect Giyu when he was unable to do that with Rengoku. It's a beautiful full circle moment for Tanjiro, and he looks just freaking badass with the way his eyes get very red and you can kind of tell he's not seeing things the way he normally sees them. His mark changing and just everything about him, the way he speaks so calmly. Shout out to Hanai-san for his voice acting with both the Akaza line and the way Tanjiro speaks when he is in the see-through world, just being a lot more calm. I always love it when you can hear Tanjiro be a little bit more not relaxed, but just very quiet, because Tanjiro's such a passionate kid that he constantly is speaking very loudly, but in this moment he's a lot quieter. So those are the honorable mentions, but truly those are some of my absolute favorite moments with Tanjiro. It is very hard to narrow down everything with Tanjiro because he just has some really incredible moments, but those barely made the cut. I had to include them in the video though. Alright, and coming in at number 5, we have Tanjiro's monologue to Akaza at the end of Mugen Train. This being included might surprise some people, but I do think it's actually one of the more misunderstood scenes within the story as a whole. I've seen a lot of people react to this scene, like YouTube anime reactors and that sort of thing, and I've even seen people kind of giggle at this scene because they see it as Tanjiro just kind of being a little bit dumb. You know, he's yelling at Akaza to not run away because Akaza's scared, and we all know that Akaza is running away because of the sun, not because he's like scared of Tanjiro or Rengoku. But from my perspective, this scene is literally all of the emotions that Tanjiro has been holding in for the entirety of the story so far, kind of just boiling over, and he's aiming it all at Akaza because that's the only thing within the vicinity that he can. He can regulate his emotions enough to know that his anger that he does feel, he gets angry quite often through the story actually. He has a lot of anger inside of him. He knows to not aim that at anyone that's not a demon, right? He knows he has to aim that at Akaza in this moment. And I've talked a lot about the final bits of Mugen Train and how people tend to misunderstand Tanjiro's emotions in general in this scene. Tanjiro is not super emotional just because Rengoku is dying. Tanjiro is emotional because he's frustrated, because everything that he's worked for over the past few months and years leading up to this, he feels like it means nothing, because not only did he just watch someone who's clearly stronger than him not be able to defeat an upper rank demon, but he also couldn't do anything. That was like the main thing that he was so upset about, was that he was so powerless in that moment that he could not jump in to help. So he feels like a failure. He feels like he can't even be someone who would take down Muzan at this moment. Yes, some of his emotions are brought on by Rengoku dying. I think people forget that he has a heightened sense of smell, so he can be loyal to people a lot faster than the average person, because he can literally sniff out if they're trying to deceive him or not. But anyway, his monologue to Akaza just really shows how emotionally traumatized he was, and it was finally his time to just kind of let it out. And he aimed it all at Akaza, enough to actually kind of make Akaza really upset, and that led into their fight later on in the Infinity Castle. Like, he truly left an impression on Akaza, even if what he was saying didn't make a whole lot of sense because Akaza was just running away because of the sun. But it's almost refreshing to see Tanjiro kind of lash out when it's something that we've kind of wanted him to do for the entirety of the story, because he has been through so much, losing nearly everyone he loves. It's refreshing to see him just kind of lash out in this moment. Coming in at number 4 is Blood Tear Tanjiro. So fun fact, this scene is actually when I became obsessed with Demon Slayer. Yes, it took me a while to become obsessed. I'm not saying it took me this long to enjoy the story. I definitely was loving Demon Slayer prior to this episode coming out. But this episode actually came out when I had COVID and I had nothing to do but to watch TV for about 10 days straight, and this episode just kept on coming to the forefront of my mind, and it eventually turned into my hyperfixation. Blood Tear Tanjiro was so interesting because when you watch it, it's kind of confusing, like what is happening. I believe he was just so angry that the blood vessels in his eyes popped, so it caused him to literally bleed out of his eyes, which goes back to what I was saying about the last scene. Tanjiro holds a lot of anger inside of him. He just regulates it to make sure that he doesn't aim it at the wrong people. For the most part, there's a couple times where he lashes out a little bit at probably the wrong people. But this is kind of like one of those scenes where the faucet just kind of breaks because he's been keeping these emotions of anger down, and he witnesses a demon just murder people right in front of him for what seems like the fun of the game instead of for food. And we then see him do some incredible fighting. Like I mentioned with the see-through world, he speaks very calmly and quietly in this scene. He seems like he's just kind of barely even there. He's just locked and loaded. And fun fact, for those of you who don't know, when he's about to behead Daki, you can actually see the flames around his sword kind of fizzle out, which is a sign that his life force is literally run out and he was mere seconds away from dying, which is why he had that vision of his sister. Not only is Tanjiro just like totally badass in this scene, but it again just really touches on those deeper emotions within him that a lot of people don't talk about because he tends to be very happy and kind. But it's when we see him do things like this where I'm like, no, he has a lot going on inside of him. He's just really good at pushing it down. This is also the scene where they introduce Yoriichi, so bonus points to that. Number 3, and you might start to notice a bit of a trend with my favorite scenes, this is going to be when Tanjiro finally takes down Hantengu at the end of Swordsmith Village. I've talked in length about this scene. I even have a video where I watched the scene and talked about it a lot. I yapped for about it was over an hour before editing, about why this scene means so much to me as someone who just loves and adores the bond between Tanjiro and Nezuko. But let's talk about specifically when Tanjiro takes down Hantengu. Again, this is like a different version of Tanjiro than what we're used to, because not only is he angry and upset, just like the other scenes that I've been talking about, he's angry and upset because he genuinely thinks his sister has just died. I almost feel bad putting this in my top 5 because I feel like all of my favorites of Tanjiro are like, he's in emotional distress, but I feel like that's when his true colors shine through. Tanjiro goes through a very wide range of emotions during this like 10-15 minute scene, but the way this whole scene is done, with the way he is almost emptying, the way he's speaking to himself for a little while, the way he starts crying but then he lets the tears go away so that he understands his job that he needs to do, and the way he takes him down is just so satisfying because we have been trying to get rid of Hantengu for like the entire season essentially, and he just keeps living because he's this like little tiny guy inside a bigger guy, right? And it's so satisfying to see him finally kill him, but also it's like super emotional because in that moment he thinks Nezuko is gone. I don't know if I can like really put my finger on why I love this scene so much outside of the fact that everything about this scene, the way they animated it, the voice acting, the music, it just made for like the perfect scene in my opinion. This episode is actually still my favorite episode in Demon Slayer because of the emotional weight that it carries. But what can I say? I like seeing Tanjiro be a total badass, but I also really just enjoy the scenes where his emotions are kind of all over the place, again because he is constantly so kind, and that's what I truly love about him. But because I love that about him, I do like it when he is a little bit different, when he lets that anger show, when he lets his emotions kind of get the better of him, because I think it shows just how like emotionally vulnerable he actually is, and it helps us as an audience kind of process the emotions with him. Alright, my top 2 scenes are going to be manga spoilers. These are going to be quite big, huge manga spoilers, so this is going to be where you need to end the video. If you are not a manga reader, put a pin in it, and hopefully you can check this video out after you've read the manga or after the anime has been completed. With that, I'm about to say a huge spoiler, so I'm going to give y'all a countdown before I say something that's a really big spoiler for the story. 3, 2, 1. My second favorite moment with Tanjiro is surprisingly Demon King Tanjiro. I have quite a lot to say about this scene. I've held off for a while because it's really hard to make a video that's specifically talking about a manga moment without making the thumbnail or the title manga spoilers, because I can't really censor that, so it makes it really difficult. But let's just say I'm going to try and compartmentalize my thoughts on this scene in 5 minutes or less. And you might seeing a trend, you're like, Hannah, why do you like seeing Tanjiro suffer so much? I don't know. Yeah, most of my favorite moments with him are him suffering. I should probably get that checked out. Anyway, so Demon King Tanjiro was, in my opinion, the best way to add a plot twist at the end. There's actually moments throughout the show where I felt like we were kind of like, what would happen if Tanjiro became a demon? What would happen if he had to, say, become a demon to save Nezuko? Would he do it? And obviously the situation for him was not that. It was quite literally he was clinically dead and Muzan was like, I'm dying, so I'm gonna try to just do this last resort and force my blood into you. And of course, a lot of people are like, oh, it's the plot armor, like this is how Tanjiro was able to survive the end of the story. A lot of people try to argue that it would have been better if he had just died, which I disagree with. Tanjiro worked incredibly hard for the entire series, and while I do understand the point of people thinking that he could die at the end, I think if he did, if that's the route the story went, I would understand. I do think it's better to have him at least survive until 25, because so many people, like everyone was trying to work hard so that Tanjiro and Nezuko could live on, right? Demon King Tanjiro is a really good exploration of his entire emotional turmoil, in my opinion, because he's not able to control it. And there's a lot of different reasons why I think he might not have been able to control it. Number one is I do think Muzan specifically says he's giving him all of his blood, which he doesn't usually do. He usually gives people like a little tiny bit of his blood to turn them into a demon. But from what I can tell, Muzan gave him all of his blood, which kind of makes me feel like maybe Tanjiro was just not Tanjiro. It was just Muzan in Tanjiro's body. And they also depict that he was kind of like trapped in this like fleshy area that was like overtaking him, right? So there is like that idea that maybe he couldn't control it simply because it just wasn't him at all. It was just his body with Muzan inside of it. But going even deeper into that, I think it is an interesting contrast that he is kind of able to control at least the desire to eat Nezuko, but he's not really able to do anything else, which does tell me that he's somewhat present, he's trying, but he can't. Nezuko was able to control her demonic needs, her desire to eat, pretty much immediately, but Tanjiro wasn't able to do that. So I think the exploration of his character and maybe saying like, hey, there's a lot of darkness inside of him, and maybe that darkness does stem from the last couple of years that he's spent being a demon slayer. In fact, probably most of it is, that Nezuko didn't necessarily have in the moment that she got turned. But what if Tanjiro has just been pushing down a lot of those emotions and everything bubbles up to the surface, and it shows that Tanjiro's maybe not the like perfect kind person that we've all thought he was throughout the story, which still at this point in the story I don't feel like he is. I feel like he's had plenty of times where he's kind of let his anger out and kind of lashed out, as I've mentioned just in this video alone. Gosh, it's so hard to explain why I like these scenes so much. I feel like I just keep going back to, I feel like all of these scenes just show a different side of Tanjiro that prove that he's not like the moral Jesus that people try to argue that he is. Do I think this scene was maybe a bit too short? Yes. I don't think it was too short chronologically because he was going to end up killing someone if he didn't get turned back to a human. I only think it would have been interesting to maybe explore a little bit more about like Gyu's comments of thinking that maybe he was trying to fight it. And yeah, it would have been just like a little bit more interesting to explore what could have happened. But the whole point was that he couldn't kill anyone, because in the way Demon Slayer works, if you kill someone, you're going to hell. So it's kind of like after all of the good things that Tanjiro has done, his life, and how hard he's worked to be a good person and how natural that is to him, that in this moment when he can't even control the transformation, like he had no choice, he was crossing into the afterlife, that would cause him to end up in hell is like a very, yeah, you can't leave him a demon for too long because he was very OP. Like he had conquered the sun immediately and that sort of thing. So that means that he can't be killed by them. Like you mentioned, that he's like, not even a bright red blade would work on him since he's already conquered the sun. What do we do? So I do just, even though it was short, I really liked the way this went. Like when this happened in the story, it was the only moment in Demon Slayer where I turned the page and was like, I did not expect that. I had seen, I think, manga panels of it and gotten spoiled without knowing because I thought it was like fan art or something. So I was fully not expecting them to go that route. And I like it. I think that the story doesn't really take many twists and turns. It stays very straightforward. This is why people think it's mid and, you know, too simple, whatever. But I do like that this is like the one twist, because I do think that it explored his character deeper. It explored the idea of all of the pain that was happening to him was there. It wasn't that he was ignoring it. It wasn't that he just didn't feel it. It was that he was pushing it down so that he could be the leader, so that he could be there for Nezuko, that he could be there for the people around him. And in that moment, it was like all of those bad feelings, all of those like emotions and all of that pain just came to the surface and manifested in the way he was acting, which was very like animalistic and feral and just like lashing out at everyone. So I really like it. I'm really looking forward to getting animated, although I'm not, because I'm gonna be an emotional wreck. But let's be honest, I like stories better when they make me emotional because I feel more connected, and I think that's why so many, if not all of these, are like super emotional moments, are super like vulnerable moments, are mostly him suffering. It's because I feel more emotionally connected to the story when I feel those emotions for those characters. All right, but let's talk about my number one, which maybe is actually a little bit different from the rest, and that is sun breathing. So for those of you who don't know, or maybe didn't catch it, I should say, because if you're watching this, you probably know, in the middle of that final arc with Muzan, right after he kind of comes back to life from like the first big hit, he switches from Hinokami Kagura to Hinokokyu when he is finally like taking on Muzan for real for the first time. And this is after, you know, he had those inherited memory dreams with Yoriichi and all of them. And he's finally able to establish that, yes, he is doing sun breathing. So he changes from Hinokami Kagura to Hinokokyu. I'm not gonna lie, this is one of those times where I'm like, I feel like in order for this to hit the way I feel like it's going to hit when it's animated, you have to watch it subbed. Because going from Hinokami Kagura to Hinokokyu, the way they sound very similar, I think it's just gonna be like a really big moment. And I guess this is one of the only times, I mean, he's still suffering during this. He's in a lot of pain. He's already pretty much died and come back to life and is literally doing this off of the fumes of wanting to take down Muzan. But in this moment, he pretty much becomes the strongest in universe, at least the strongest demon slayer, because he has finally started sun breathing. Like, he's been sun breathing the entire time, but now he's like officially using sun breathing. And I do think that he technically is like the strongest demon slayer in this moment, even though he never comes close to Yoriichi's power, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because Tanjiro is essentially depicted as like being at least on par with Gyomei here, which Gyomei has been so incredibly freaking strong the entire story. Like, he's been depicted as the strongest of the current Demon Slayer Corps, and also we've established that the current Demon Slayer Corps is the strongest it's been since the beginning. Like, I don't know, it's just, when I get to see Tanjiro like level up, and when I get to see Tanjiro just like come into his own and be really strong, I love those moments too. So, is he suffering? Yes. Happy birthday, Tanjiro! Celebrating you suffering. Good thing you're a fictional character and it doesn't actually matter. This is such a random video too, because I didn't prepare my thoughts ahead of time. I don't even know what I'm saying. I don't even know how I'm conveying my thoughts, if I'm doing it well enough or not, but I digress. I do think this scene where Muzan calls out, like, who's the real demon, because Tanjiro is, like, battered and bruised. He has this giant, like, thing growing out of his face, a mass of just blood and skin and like, it's just, right? And Muzan's like, who's the real demon? Because Muzan is still this, like, even though he's aging a lot and he's clearly like a bit battle torn, he still is like very majestic with his long hair and his beautiful face. And I think that is just like an interesting comment for Muzan to make, because who's the real demon? It's like, that's a very surface level comment, because you're literally talking about the appearance of each other, right? Tanjiro looks like a demon because he's been just completely destroyed in this fight, while Muzan looks the picture of health still. And I just find that like an interesting thought. I don't know where I'm going with this. But when Muzan's like, who's the real demon, and Tanjiro's standing there, he does look like a demon. But he's specifically not yet. He's going to be. Guys, check on me when the final move. Actually, just check on me for the rest of the story. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, like we're getting impatient. When's the second movie coming out? I'm like, why do we want the second movie to come out? I don't want it to come out. I'm scared. Anyway, just that whole process of him switching from Hinokami Kagura to Hinokokyu and the strength that he has, the way he saves Kanao, you know, just all of that moment is very like, oh, and I think when it gets animated, it's gonna be even more grand because it's finally like the main hero coming into his true own, even though his own powers are borrowed from Yoriichi, and he's learned that he can never really be as strong as Yoriichi because he's not actually a descendant of him. I just think that whole process is very interesting, and so yeah, that's my favorite moment with Tanjiro. At least as of now. We'll see. I feel like this list could definitely change after everything's animated because once I have like everything out in front of me with all of the voice acting and all of the music and all the animation, I feel like it'll be interesting to kind of compare and see if my thoughts change at all. Because truly, I feel like most of my favorites really have to do with like Tanjiro's character and his emotions and his development and like seeing the true colors. And then my favorite one is like, ah, yeah, he's badass. He's cool. So it's interesting. Now that I'm like saying it, I'm like, huh, this is interesting. But that's my top 5 favorite moments with Tanjiro. What's your favorite moment with Tanjiro? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's kind of random. It's kind of, I don't know. I just don't feel like I got my point across at all. But it's hard for me to do so. Sometimes I love something so much that it's genuinely hard for me to explain why I love it so much. And that's genuinely how I feel about Tanjiro. And sometimes even Demon Slayer in general. Like, someone's like, why do you love it so much? I'm like, well, the characters are really good. And then I feel like I can't like explain why, which is interesting. But that's just who I am. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment your thoughts. This was like a bit more of a candid video, I think. I think you're just like kind of hearing me yap, which is all the time, but this one was definitely more of a yap session than anything else. I was like, blah, 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 blah. I love Tanjiro. I love Tanjiro. Do you love Tanjiro? You better. If you don't love Tanjiro, why do you watch me? Like, that's the next question. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video. I'll see you on the next one. Matane.